Rejoice, everyone. We're back with another Sekhie Reacts to Fate.
Oh no, there's another one. Aren't you guys getting sick and tired of these by now?
Well, please don't get sick and tired till after this one. This is one of my favorites.
Yeah, I can tell, especially since you've been streaming related content for the last, 2 months?
I know.
I mean, I watched you struggle with that fight the other night because you were accidentally on Sword Demon.
Fuck right off.
That was so funny. Like, you do not normally get, worked up playing video games.
No, you just don't see me play video games that often.
I know, but, I could tell by the tone of your voice.
I was actually pretty damn,
You were getting pissed.
That was pretty damn censored of me. I was holding back from, my normal baby gamer rage.
I figured you didn't want to be, full out rage, in the middle of a stream, but I was I could tell by the shortness of voice and the tone and just the...
You've never seen me fully collapse into I fucking hate this game, and then 3 seconds later, yeah, it was the greatest game I've ever played.
You are by far the better of me. I would have thrown my controller through the screen.
Haven't done that yet.
Part way in. I would have given up long before you did, and in a much more dramatic manner.
Haven't done that yet. The most I've ever gotten to in terms of physically raging is a desk slam.
Because, I'm gonna be real, 8 months ago, I failed at a fight in Hogwarts Legacy 5 times, and then I just turned the game off, and then I had to move the PlayStation because I was moving around my rooms.
You haven't picked it up since.
I have not even plugged the PlayStation back in since. Because every time I think about it, I think about that fucking fight.
Well, you're going to have to plug it in eventually.
I know.
Stare at that drawer.
Anyways, so as you might have known, or could tell by our talking, or perhaps by just simply looking at the screen if you're watching this instead of listening to it.
Or the title that you clicked on.
Oh yeah, that too.
Or the thumbnail that you clicked on.
Yeah, I forgot about those. We're doing servants related to Fate Samurai Remnant, but not because of that.
We're not doing the full gambit of Samurai Remnant servants today. God, no.
No. We had already planned to do Miyamoto Musashi this month before Fate Samurai Remnant came out. And then we just added a little bit onto it.
Yeah, added about 1/3 of extra content to this video.
Exactly. Because why not? We have the time. We hate ourselves. Seemed like a genuinely smart thing to do. Anyways, there's something I want to do before we start. And that's to kind of give a brief recap of some of the major time periods in Japanese history, because we've talked about servants from a couple major time periods in Japanese history so far. And occasionally I mention the names, and I think that doesn't always connect to a year date for people for reference, because there's definitely at least once where I've said Sengoku Jidai and Nick Nack said that's the wrong years, and then I double checked it afterwards and I'm like, no, technically it does include those years. It's not traditionally ascribed, but it does include those years. So we don't typically... Why is your head down on the desk?
Why not?
So we don't typically go that far back in Japanese history, but just for kind of a brief overcap, remember, so the Jomon period is, I'm not going all the way back to the Paleolithic, but the Jomon's the first culture period of Japan, about 1400 BC to 300 BC. And then we have the Yayoi period, which is 300 BC to 250 AD. Technically, I think Himiko fell into the Yayoi period, I believe. I could be 100 years off or so.
Y'all are lucky I don't have the history of Japan, I guess, memorized to a T. Otherwise, I'd be reciting that right now.
If you were to start the video playing, I could recite it alongside him. I do know it. So that's the Yayoi period. I think Himiko fits in there. I may be off by 100 years. If I am off by 100 years or so, then Himiko is part of the Kofun period, which was about 250 to 538 AD. Then there was the Asuka period, 538 to 710 approximately, the Nara period from 710 to 794, and then we get into the first major period that we've done a bunch of servants in, which is the Heian period, or Heian Kyo, right? 794 to 1185, because that's when we covered what is it? Tale of Genji and the Pillow Book, Lady Murasaki Shikibu and
That is
Seishon
Fate's
Nagon.
other favorite Japanese
Yeah.
era in history.
Followed by the Kamakura period, 1185 to 1336. Then the Muromachi period from about 1336 to 1573. This is where it gets a little funky because technically the Sengoku Jidai, the Warring States period, goes from about 430, 460 to 1630 to 1660 by the loosest definition. There are, like, obviously the period isn't fully agreed on, but generally it does cover about a 200-year period right there in the middle. So we have talked about servants from that period. Technically, there's also a short period sort of right before that called the Nanbokucho period, but we don't really talk about that. We haven't talked about it on the channel yet. So then the other interesting thing is the Sengoku Jidai overlaps with the Azuchi Momoyama period, which went from about 1568 to 1603. So Sengoku Jidai is its own period, but it technically overlaps with the period before it and after it because it's not a period defined necessarily by like a very specific ruling family or structure like the rest of these periods are. It's the tumultuous time in between two other periods that kind of stretches between one and the other. So then there's the Edo period. This is the Tokugawa, right? This is 1603 to 1868. The Meiji from 1868 to 1912. Taisho, 1912 to 1926. Showa, 1926 to 1989. And Heisei is the most recent period. So we've talked about servants in several of these different periods before. I think technically Tamamu no Mai starts really early here and then goes all the way through.
Heian.
Yeah. But like she has earlier stories of like before the
A lot of
Heian.
those are like kind of
Shifted around, but yes, it still counts. So, you know, we've talked about a lot of things, but our main period of concern here is the space between the kind of the Muromachi and the Azuchi Momoyama to the Edo, right? There's that like 200-year period. I mean, we're not covering 200 years today, obviously. This is one man's life and his son.
We're covering mostly early Edo, late, I don't remember the period that's right before Edo.
I mean, not even quite early Edo, right? Because Miyamoto Musashi is born in 1584, and that is very firmly not Edo period. That is actually Sengoku Jidai.
But his son definitely like goes right into Edo.
Yeah. I mean, even
I think he lives right till the very beginning of Edo. Like I said, early Edo.
Oh no, he lives into the Edo period because Edo begins 1603. He lives 42 years after that. I mean, granted, he may have essentially he spends about a third of his life in the Sengoku Jidai and 2/3 in Edo period. But I mean, and that was one of the most tumultuous periods in history. So he did live through a lot of very interesting and influential events in Japanese history. So, dude, this is the example of like, may you live in interesting times. This man lived in interesting times.
Okay, but this man relished in those interesting times.
And you know what? Good for fucking him. Could not be me. Because when I said, I wanted to live in interesting times, I got COVID.
You didn't get like a award that you could die in. Go to
yeah. I mean, not that I want to live during a wartime period or anything. And technically we are on two fronts living in a period of global war. But, interesting times,
Civil War.
It was supposed to be vacation trips to the moon, not COVID. You know what I mean? So I do have this here for those of you who can maybe see the title, but I do actually have an illustrated copy of The Five Rings. I've got another normal one around here somewhere, but I'm going to be honest, I have really been slacking on keeping the library organized and cataloged over the last year or so. Ever. let me rephrase that to ever. So while I know that there is another copy of this book around here somewhere that I was going to lend to Knick-Knack in case he did not have his own copy, I could not find it. So Knick-Knack can look through this while we're talking if he wants. There's some interesting art in there because I have the illustrated copy. I think some of the art is Miyamoto Musashi's himself as well, which is really nice. Because this man was an artist. I mean, he was a many other things, but he was also an artist. So, Miyamoto Musashi, as we already talked about, born in about 1584, died, 1645, about 42 years into the kind of Tokugawa era, the Edo period. Born with a different name, born as Shinmen Benosuke, right? He's also got a Buddhist name, Niten Doraku. So, that, which is pretty common. We've seen that already in quite a few servants.
Nobunaga.
Yeah, you take a different name when you're older or become known by a different name through some reasoning or another.
Oh, that's a cat, not your feet. I was like, Sekhie, stop kicking me, and it was Peaches.
It's a Peachy! Oh, goodness! It's a Peachy!
I just got licked.
Yeah, she does that. Be grateful she's not sucking on your finger. She does that too. Or chewing on you. She does that too. Oh, by the way, thank you for everyone who voted in the poll as to whether or not my Peachy darling was a heckin' chunk or hefty chunk. You all have underestimated her by calling her a heckin' chunk, but I will accept that and tell that to her vet next time that her vet calls her overweight. I'll just be like, she's just a heckin' chunk. She's not a hefty chunk yet, as voted by crowd approval. So, Miyamoto Musashi. Also, he's most well known for his philosophy, kind of swordsmanship, being a strategist, and his art, right? So this man was pretty prolific across a lot of different aspects of life and culture, which means that his teachings, art, philosophy, and his kind of prolific and well spread across Japan. And as a result of that, we have a lot of it left over, especially because this man's writing like straight into the Edo period. That's not that long ago. Which means that we get a lot of preservation at this point of like texts and other stuff. Hello, heckin' Chungus. Oh yeah. For those of you who said hefty, who didn't say hefty chunk, reconsider. She is purring. She did not mind that. Not one bit. Hello, my love. You are in the way. You are too large to be sitting right there. All right. So, distract her.
We have a video to record, Peaches.
Peachy, can you go make friends with Knick Knack? No? All right, come on. Let's see. All right. Pull my notes back up because she knocked them down. All right.
Peaches, that tickles!
What did she do?
Started kneading my gut.
Yeah, she does that. So, we don't have a ton of detail given to us about the early life of... What am I calling him? What do you call him?
Miyamoto Musashi. Shinmen... No, I want you to say the full Shinmen Miyamoto Musashi.
Okay, alright. Well, no, because it feels weird to keep going with, like, the full...
And just say Musashi.
Yeah, okay, alright. So we don't have a ton of information about his very early life, right? Like him before the age of maybe 10, 13 or so, other than what he states about himself in the Book of Five Rings, right? And in the Book of Five Rings, he says that he was born in Harima Province, which there's an early biography that also supports this assertion, saying that he was born in Banshu in 12 Tensho, the year of the monkey. And something interesting to note about Asian date systems is typically the names of the years and eras change with the emperor or shogun at the time or whatever's happening. So when it says, 12 Tensho, something usually relating to whoever's determining the calendar of the year and what's important. But he lived in a village in a different... Fuck me. Peaches deleted a sentence from my notes. Alright, So, even... No! Stop it.
Fuzzy baby.
Fuzzy baby! The fucking dumbass, that's what it is. So even though Musashi himself says that he was born in Harima province, there are a few historians who disagree with this and say that he was born in a different province, right? Generally it's ascribed to the Mimasaka province. And then Musashi gives his full name in the title and in the Book of Five Rings. He calls himself Shinmen Musashi no Kami Fujiwara no Harunobu, which is really long, and that's a lot for someone who's not necessarily of, noble birth per se. I'm not saying he wasn't, but like his father was a martial artist and master of the sword, and they were vassals of the lord of the Yoshino district of the Mimasaka province. So he was connected to nobility in some ways, but he himself was not born a noble. Fucking cat. Is she gone?
I think she's gone.
Oh,
back there eating.
God. Demon child. All right. It's said that as a child he had pretty severe eczema, right? So and it was noticed in his appearance. So obviously he definitely something was up with his face. Eczema typically presents in children with a lot of redness and pimples, rash, that sort of thing. So it would have been very noticeable to people around him. So it's no surprise that we have sources about him having eczema. It's fairly noticeable. When he was 13, he had his first duel that he successfully won against a samurai who fought using a different style than him. And he wrote about this in the Gorin no Sho, right? The Book of Five Rings. And he said that his opponent was called Arima Kehi, a sword learner from the Shinto Ryu style, founded by Tsukahara Bokuden, who was at this point still had recently passed away, within the last 13 years, based on that person's kind of life. But there's a larger recording of this duel in the Hyoho Senshi Denki, or anecdotes about the deceased master. It talks about how in 1596 Musashi was 13, and he met with a samurai who was traveling, and they had a duel, and he won, right? And this was from kind of another author writing about the life of Musashi. According to himself and others, including the registry of the region that he came from, in 1599 he left his village to travel at around the age of 15 to 16, and all of his possessions, worldly possessions, besides what he took with him, were left to his sister and her husband, and he spent his time then traveling and engaging in duels to better himself and his own style of swordsmanship. Right? Because one of the things he does is he kind of creates his own form of swordsmanship. It's called the Niten Ichiryu. Yeah, Niten Ichiryu. And so he's the founder of that. Interestingly enough, in 2000, a school to that style was dedicated in Japan. So very recently, a school was dedicated to this in Japan.
It still continues on.
Oh, yeah. A lot of the famous sword styles do, if they didn't die out by this period. Because it's even back then, yes, it was a way to fight, but it's also an art form, and in some ways a way to meditate and kind of contemplate the universe and things like that. And you know how philosophers love their universe contemplations. Lord knows. Is that Luna eating?
Yes.
Good girl. So he travels around Japan for about a decade and some odd years, dueling against different people, learning, traveling, refining his own sword style. And in 1611, he began practicing at the Myoshinji Temple, where he met a vassal to Hosokawa Tadaoki named Nagaoka Sado. And this lord had received the Kumamoto domain in Kyushu after the Battle of Sekigahara, which most people attribute to be essentially the end of the Sengoku Jidai, right? Is this Battle of Sekigahara. So at this point, Musashi's father, right, Munesai, had moved to Kyushu and become Tadaoki's teacher, meaning that there's a chance that he was actually introduced to him. There's a chance that his father introduced him to Sasaki Kojiro, who was a guest of the Hosokawa clan at the time. However, that's not necessarily substantiated, but one way or another, what came into being was that they proposed a duel between the two. By the way, I need y'all to know that before we started recording this, I sat down and I was like, okay, you gave me these characters, right? And I looked in Knick-Knack's face and I said, yeah, and Sakata Kintoki. Instead of Sasaki Kojiro, because I got confused about the names.
That's Heian period.
Yeah, I know, but it's S and then it's K and it's Sa and it's Sa. It's look, also because we have Sakata Kintoki in the D&D campaign, even though we rarely use him, but we don't have Sasaki Kojiro. Or do
no, you had him. You guys just got him killed.
It was a mistake, but it was a funny one.
I should have killed you in that incident, too.
I can never die. Legends never die.
Keep telling yourself that. I think you're fighting Ku-Alter soon.
I will destroy Coulter.
Good luck with that.
So, we don't really have a firm reason for why the duel was proposed or who proposed it initially, but what happened was it was scheduled for April 13th of 1612, and Musashi at that time would have been about 30 years old. He might have been 29 or 30, depending on the year reckoning that you count, but it was scheduled like that. So, supposedly, they were supposed to depart by boat for the duel at the hour of the dragon in the early morning, right, which approximately 8 a.m., which, makes me think of another meme that I will probably insert into this video. And they went to the island of Ganryujima, which was a small island between Honshu and Kyushu. Technically, the Hosokawa officials banned spectators, but the island filled up with them anyways. As with any publicized duel between famous figures, people are gonna watch. People are gonna come. It doesn't really matter. So Sasaki Kojiro was known at this time for wielding this really, really impressively sized nodachi, right? Or Japanese greatsword, which we've talked about before. And he had his own special technique, which we'll cover later. I'm not going to get into it here. So Kojiro arrived at the appointed time, but Musashi overslept and left him to wait for several hours. So he sent out servants to get him, and Musashi woke up, ate a full breakfast, took his time, and finally arrived at the site of the duel.
I love the theories that this is all calculated.
Yeah, right? Like, I want to disrespect him.
It was to disrespect, to arrive late so that the tides are higher so he can get out easier if he killed Kojiro.
Exactly.
I love those theories.
And of course, as he was sailing over the straits of Kanmon, he carved an oversized bokken, which is like a wooden practice sword, from the ship's oar with his knife, making a wooden sword. And then when he arrived, Kojiro was like, "How fucking dare you!"
You show up late and not even with a real sword.
Yep, and then he threw his scabbard into the sea as a symbolic sign that he would fight to the death over the dishonor and insult. Musashi then responded that clearly Kojiro was not confident in himself if he thought he'd never get a chance to use such a fine scabbard again, which... This
is like one of those YouTuber boxing matches.
Yeah. It's a little bit like watching someone try so hard and still get bitch slapped. They fought, swinging their weapons at one another. The swords met. Musashi's headband fell off, sliced by Kojiro's sword straight from his head, but not hurting his skull or his head. And Musashi struck true, cleaving into Kojiro's skull.
Keeping in mind, Musashi doesn't even have a proper sword.
No, he literally brained this man with a fucking wooden oar. I have never felt such kinship with a person before in my life. He took a wooden oar and just
whack,
brained someone so hard he split their skull open. And although, I guess, skulls are not all that. I mean, they're strong, but they're strong in specific ways.
But it's questionable what killed Saseki here. Blood loss or blunt force trauma?
Yeah. Because the results of a significant head wound, I mean, you could survive the initial trauma to the brain and the skull, but in the healing process, if you kind of get your blood clots or something, like there's a lot of early head wounds do not heal properly, and it's really just more of a toss-up as to whether like significant head wounds heal historically. Trephinations are really famous, which is like ancient skull surgery. It's really famous that we have a ton of examples of trephination because a lot of people didn't survive trephination for their skull to like grow back and recover when there were issues. Like we have a lot of skulls where it's very obvious that like, it's like 500 AD and someone's like hacking away at their skull to relieve the pressure from like something wrong, and there's no healing of the skull like evident in the bone, which means they did not survive said surgery. And then there's also, there's always the possibility, I mean, you hit the brain is a mysterious thing, and we know a lot about the brain, but something as small as like a tap to the wrong area too hard, it's weird. It's fucking weird.
The way it's all told, it's like very WWE, except they kill each other, actually.
Right. It's like their swords clashed. His headband was sliced, but he did not bleed. He took his sword, and he cleaved his head. It's very, which, I mean, kind of makes sense if you get the... If the accounts we have are essentially conglomerations of a bunch of witness statements and stuff like that, it actually makes sense that it would be...
is so mythicized?
Yeah, because human memory is extremely fallible, and so it has been proven that the more times somebody remembers something, the more details will start to change and become incorrect, and every single person sees things differently. So across like even 15 accounts, you would get a shit ton of variation, and then the more times those 15 people told their accounts, the more different they would become.
It also probably doesn't help that we already know from the birth province thing that Musashi is absolutely willing to stretch the truth as far as it'll go.
Exactly, or at least like give information that isn't corroborable by other sources necessarily. So it's pretty interesting. But I mean, he won, and then that's the important thing. So this all happened when he was about 30 years old, 1612. He continues traveling around Japan, learning, teaching, writing, just kind of living his life. And the next kind of major events in his life take place when he's about 50, right? Like approaching the end of his life. So in 1633, he returned to Hosokawa Tadatoshi, right, and Kumamoto Castle. And he stayed with the Hosokawas once again. At this point, he was engaging in fewer and fewer duels. I mean, he was significantly older at this point and was much more well established. So I would assume that both A, he probably didn't take on as many duels, and B, not as many people challenged him to duels at this point in his life. In 1634, though, at the arrangement of one of the lords, he did fight against a lance specialist named Takeda Matabe, and he successfully defeated him, and at this point he officially became a retainer of the Hosokawa lords of Kumamoto in 1640. He received from the lord 17 retainers of his own, a stipend of koku, and Chiba Castle as the place where he could live. Because you have to remember, during kind of the Tokugawa time, what happened was you had the daimyo. Their family lived in the capital. The daimyo were to spend 1 year in their fief, and then 1 year kind of in the capital with the shogun. And this was sort of like a, what's the word? Their family were essentially hostages against them. Morning! Hi. Their family were essentially hostages, and this is what led to a lot of economic issues that would eventually lead to the end of the Tokugawa. But samurai retainers were given more and more power inside the domains because they became the overseers of a lot of what was happening when the lord wasn't there. And even when the lord was there, you know, it's hard to catch up on a year's worth of stuff when you've been gone for a year. So business was done, and especially kind of leadership of these domains was done primarily through the use of samurai retainers. And samurai retainers became more and more educated, and honestly less and less participants in like traditional warfare and dueling lifestyles, because now they were responsible for large areas of land. They had stipends, they had their own servants, and so they became more sedentary and that sort of thing, which is kind of an interesting changeover, especially when you look at like Miyamoto Musashi, because he was already kind of educated, he wrote, he philosophized and all that. So, but he was also like this heavy dueler during his younger years, traveling all over. But it's almost like looking at the shift of samurai through one man's life. Right?
Like you see him being ahead of his time in some respects, but also like clearly an era of the past as you're moving into the...
Exactly, because he's still fighting duels, but we're moving into a period where the samurai were used less and less for war. And for conflict, and more as glorified accountants and assistants, which would eventually become a sticking point for merchant class people.
There was technically one conflict in there that he participated in. Technically. Barely.
Technically. So in 1641, he wrote the 35 Instructions of Strategy for the Hosokawa. And this work overlapped and would later form the basis for his Book of Five Rings. This was the same year he adopted Hirao Yoemon to become his son, and he became the master of arms in the Owari fief at the time. In 1642, he started suffering from attacks of what historians now think was neuralgia, which kind of explains why he was later in bad health at the end of his life, because neuralgia is degenerative. In 1643, he retired to a cave and became a hermit to write the Book of Five Rings, and he finished it in 2 years. And in 1645, he writes, that he sensed his impending death, and so he bequeathed his worldly possessions, and then gave his manuscript of the book to the younger brother of his closest disciple, and died in the cave around 1645. The Hyoho Senshi Denki, which we talked about before, describes his passing at this point, and it says, at the moment of his death, he had himself raised up, he had his belt tightened, and his wakizashi put in it. He seated himself on one knee, vertically raised, holding his sword with his left hand, and a cane with his right, dying in this posture at age 62. All the principal vassals of Lord Hosokawa and other officers gathered, and they carried out the ceremony and set up a tomb on Mount Iwato on the order of their lord. Historians now believe he died of thoracic cancer, so cancer in his chest, but he died peacefully after finishing the text Dokodo and the 21 precepts on self-discipline and his guides to the future generations.
Wouldn't that be how you want to go? Like just finishing up like some of your seminal works and then just like passing peacefully.
Right. So he actually has 4 adopted children that we know of with names, right? So we talked about Yoemon. Yoemon was one of them. Another one was Miyamoto Iori. And then there was Kurotaro and Mikinosuke. So those were his 4 sons. He had a daughter. We do not know anything about his daughter. We do not know if she was adopted. We do not know if she was, like, officially. We don't know if she was genetically his. We don't even really know her name. which is unfortunate because women are often not recorded in history, especially in patriarchal societies, and that leads to a lot of loss of kind of records and family lines, because if you don't record your daughters, you lose like branches of your family.
Like, who knows what she ended up doing? Maybe you're related to Miyamoto Musashi and you didn't know if you're Japanese.
Genuinely. Yeah. Even if it's through adoption. It'd still be a pretty cool thing to be able to claim. You know? A lot of family lines wouldn't have died out in various areas of the world if you recorded daughters as well and kept track of their offspring. But part of that has to do with the way that family lines are passed down in patriarchal societies. They're passed through sons, and so daughters are considered to marry in and become their husband's line, because the children they give belong to their husband's line, not their line. Although technically, if you look at European history when it comes to royalty, we would now call these cadet branches and such, because a lot of times when royalty like struggled to conceive, or like a bunch of people died,
they'd have to jump around the family tree to find the heir.
You had to turn to the cadet branches of the family tree, like, oh, my great aunt married that noble and they had several children, and that one is now the next in line,
which causes its own forms of conflict.
It really does. So, you know, like, record your daughters. Which is fucking hilarious. I mentioned before, so the Miyamoto Musashi Budokan Training Center was erected in honor of his name in Okayama Prefecture in Mimasaka, which is where the historians attribute him to, which is fun. So we don't have a ton of information about his relationships as kind of evidenced by the fact that we don't have a ton about his children. He did not write a whole ton about his own interpersonal relationships, and a lot of people were more concerned with writing about him than they were writing about the people that he interacted with in the context of not duels. But the lack of information that we have about his relationships with women has led some historians to theorize that he was homosexual, which is an interesting jump to make, because they're making the presumption that that because he rejected women's sexual advances in order to focus on his swordsmanship, it doesn't mean that he just wasn't interested because he was doing something else. What they're saying is that he wasn't interested in women and was using the swordsmanship as a way to hide that, which is an interesting leap to make, because historically a lot of people who are like great philosophers and artists don't actually have very productive love lives, because they are more preoccupied with their art and what they're doing than they are with the concept of sex and getting it on. So I think that's maybe a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, not every artist is Mozart.
Yeah. So I don't personally subscribe to that, because there are a lot of stories of him getting involved with women. It's not super important. I mean, supposedly his daughter was fathered by him with a courtesan. Supposedly. That's the one myth we have about like something resulting from a tryst with a woman, right? Instead of kind of homosexual stories. So he created a sword technique called the Niten Ichiryu. Now it's called the Hyoho Niten Ichiryu, and it still exists today. Musashi was not just an expert in swords, though. He was also an expert in projectile weapons, and often would just chuck his short sword. So which is fucking hilarious, because you should not chuck a short sword. He also studied...
No.
He also heavily studied Buddhism and other schools of thought, and he did a lot of Zen brush paintings and was a big participant in kind of the art of calligraphy and even the sculpting of wood and metal. He firmly believed, and this is where he was really ahead of his time. If you read the Book of the Five Rings, one of the major things that is focused on inside this book is that he felt... You might want to close the door. Is that he felt it was very important that samurai understand other things. Like, they should not just be fighters. They should also be educated. They should also know other, like, ways to work. And they should be aware of other professions that they have talent in. Which would kind of, almost prophetic in a way, that by the end of the time of the samurai, it had gotten to the point where they were essentially learning more... What's a good word for it? Like less sword-focused learning and more accountancy and money and record keeping and kind of keeping order. So, and then a lot of samurai during the Meiji period would have to turn to other ways to make money and to live because the samurai were on their way out. Essentially what the Tokugawa did with their bakufu destroyed the samurai way of life in the long run. Because the samurai way of life was not one of sitting and taking care of fiefs and learning about accountancy and such. It was one of action and travel and dueling. And that just didn't exist anymore.
It led to a lot of discontent amongst
it really did.
The many Ronin that were created as a result of this.
It really did. And another place it led to discontent among was, so the merchant class was the lowest class in the Tokugawa order. But the problem was with the daimyo having to travel so much, right? They became increasingly reliant on borrowing money from merchants who were gaining more and more financial power, right? And so the lords became reliant on the merchants. And so the merchants would then buy their way into schools for their sons, right? Essentially buy them into samurai titles or like retainerships. But the samurai, you know, who's kind of their had been genetically, hereditarily passed down, they became really unhappy because you're looking at a bunch of samurai who aren't paid that much and who aren't making a whole lot and are essentially glorified lackeys. And then this merchant class who's so far below them in the social order is buying their way up.
Well, it's a bunch of young men trained to kill, not given anything to kill.
Yeah. Yeah, instead told to keep the books. And then when they didn't need them to keep the books, they were let go from positions that had been passed down in their families for literally 150, 200 years and told to find their own way. These men had not been trained in other ways of life. They were not trained as farmers or such unless they wanted to seek it out themselves, and not all of them did.
It's interesting because you do see this happen in different points in history after wars with the soldiers of that war.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, what the Tokugawa did was foster a 200-year period of training soldiers and then desert them all at once without giving them any practical skills or anywhere else to go.
Because most of them were not Miyamoto Musashi here, well studied.
Yeah.
And even this guy lost his mind and had to go and brought himself to a cave, and no one really stepped in.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting that he predicted what samurai should do to continue to exist, and then it's not what happened, which to me is very interesting. So just some interesting facts about Musashi himself. He was raised as his uncle by a Buddhist. Or he was raised as a Buddhist by his uncle.
Raised as an uncle by his Buddhist.
Let's just flip that sentence around. He is believed to have participated in the Battle of Sekigahara, but we don't actually know if he did. I mean, he would have been of an approximate age to have participated, but we don't actually know if he did. During the period where he was traveling around, he stayed in many different temples and such, training under a lot of different swordsmanship schools. He was trained by his father as well. He had an interesting duel with an expert in the kusarigama, which is a weapon that I have always been fascinated by. Like it's like a chain. It's like a hand scythe, but on a chain. And I think that's really cool. It's got to be really interesting to fight that as a swordsman. Do you know what I mean? He duels with a staff master in Edo, practices meditation, opens a school briefly when he's younger, only to close it. It's said that he joined in with Toyotomi Hideyori in the winter and summer campaigns at Osaka Castle, but there's no actual documentation of any contributions he made that's significant. He dueled kind of all over Japan, literally all over. At one point, he took up temporary residence in Hyogo after conducting a duel there. Has been in and out of Edo throughout his life. One of his adopted sons committed seppuku in 1626. It was Mikinosuke. After he also in the general vein of he might have been here, but he might not have. The Shimabara Rebellion, which we covered just recently.
Doesn't the story goes that he entered the battle and got hit in the head
by a rock thrown by a peasant,
fell off his horse,
and then did not contribute any further to the battle. So that's really it.
This man is like both extremely intelligent, probably kind of a liar, and also very, very much of a mess.
Yeah, like it's interesting because like he did very successfully travel around Japan for like 40 years, but at the same time, other than dueling various masters of their crafts, he doesn't really accomplish much that's documented. Like he maybe participates in 3 very interesting events in Japanese history, but maybe not at the same time. And I mean, sure, the dueling is cool and all, but it's just duels. I mean, I'm sure they're happening all over all the time. It's not as if it's special per se.
Like, this guy is if The Rock wrote a philosophy book.
A little bit, yeah. So in his book, he writes about the way of the warrior and the sort of philosophy that samurai should keep and that sort of thing. He really thinks that artisans and foremen and stuff should be respected, which is a perspective not many people in Japan, especially those who are in this privileged higher class of being samurai, took. In fact, it's fairly unheard of for a samurai to be like, hey, let's respect the common people, which I think is pretty cool. He literally talks about how if artisans thrive through events like the ruin of houses and the splendor of houses, which is a pretty awesome take on history because it's true. You know who really does well when there's like significant upheaval in who's in power? Artisans. Because everyone's going to need a new palace. Everyone's going to need new clothes. Everyone wants new jewels.
Well, not Miyamoto Musashi. He was fine with just a cave.
That's true. He was fine with just a cave. He's also very famous for his calligraphy and painting work. Of which I do know that there is some in this book. And honestly, I like Japanese art, but sometimes it's a little beyond me. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not the kind of person who sits and like meditates or philosophizes. So, take it as you will. It's impressive. I certainly could not accomplish what he did in terms of art or philosophy. So,
You ain't got the attention span for it.
I could have. I just choose not to. I don't like to have the attention span for something like that, So his book, The Five Rings, is separated into the scrolls that he wrote, the Scroll of Earth, Water, Fire, Wind, and Expanse. And that's generally how it's organized. And it's really just kind of a guide of how to live your life. If you're a warrior, the strategic way, what you should do, what you should believe in, how sword style works. Which, I mean, good for him. Really. Alright, do you want to cover Musashi now, or do you want me to...
I mean, I feel like we just covered Musashi.
You
mean for Fate?
Yeah.
No, let's just go through the names.
Okay. Alright, so... Might as well go to Sasaki Kojiro next, since we talked about him so much already. Well, not so much, but like enough. So, Sasaki Kojiro was relatively contemporary to a certain point with Musashi, born similar year.
Didn't quite make it to Edo, though.
Technically he did.
Did he?
1612.
Oh, look at that.
Remember, Edo begins 1603.
Barely.
So he was born in about 1575, originally known as Ganryu Kojiro, and he was a swordsman. Lived during the Azuchi Momoyama and the early Edo period, and the most famous story about his life is where he died to Miyamoto Musashi in 1612.
That's so unfortunate when your most famous part of your life is your death.
I mean, to be fair, at least he has the consolation prize that in later years Miyamoto Musashi would say that he was the strongest opponent he ever faced in battle. Which, for someone who spent, 40 years traveling and fighting people, that's actually an accomplishment. Like, good for him. He put up a fight.
I'd hope he would after the disrespect.
Yeah, so he found... Sasaki Kojiro also founded a sword style, a sword school. He called it... this is why he went by the name Ganryu, which means large rock style. That was the name of his kenjutsu school. It's said that he studied under the Chuju Ryu school and under potentially Master Toda Seigen, who was a master of the Kodachi. If this is true, he would have been his sparring partner, but Sasaki also used a nodachi, which is a long katana. It's essentially like the great sword of Japan. Like if a katana is a regular sword, then this is the great sword, the hand and a half, the bastard blade, the excessively long sword that you use instead of a normal one. Trafalgar Law uses one of these in One Piece, and I love it.
Well, Miyamoto Musashi was like the Nichiren Ichidi used two swords, so...
That's true. We're almost on the way to Zoro. We just gotta put another sword in your mouth. Maybe it's the Wakizashi he threw, 3-sword style. I'm kidding.
I almost wonder if that dynamic was based off of the giant sword and the multi-sword.
Oh.
And it's Japanese, so it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest.
Oh. Yeah, but I wouldn't necessarily say that... it doesn't seem to me that either Mihawk or Law, other than using a really big sword, is based off of Sasaki Kojiro. Yeah, based on their personalities and what they do, neither of them seem particularly want to be a comparison for Sasaki Kojiro. And they're not the only people in the world who use like really big swords sometimes. Personality-wise, I can't see Zoro being based after Miyamoto Musashi.
I don't know. I think of them both as sword hobos.
Who just want to fight. Actually, no. Thinking about it more, you're kind of right. Yeah.
Like I don't know. Like I don't know about Mihawk or Law, but Zoro feels like he was supposed to be based off of the general, not based directly off of like taking inspiration from the Miyamoto Musashi type.
Yeah, actually, thinking about it more now, it's not out of the realm of questioning. Interesting. Don't make me think about One Piece. Then I'm gonna want to talk about One Piece. So Sasaki Kojiro is pretty cool historically. So his duels are all pretty interesting in my opinion. There's some really fun stories about him. Like one of the ones that I liked reading the most was about his use of a Tessen, right, which is like a war fan, to fend off 3 opponents at the same time, right? Like, hell yeah, I do love me a good Tessen battle. So he was honored by Hosokawa as the chief weapons master of the fief in Kyushu. And this is where he would meet Miyamoto Musashi. He became skilled at wielding a nodachi and used one that he called the monohoshizao, or the laundry drying pole, as his strongest weapon. And so for a long time he was considered the rival of Miyamoto Musashi. And so there's a ton of accounts of this duel, and technically we already kind of talked about this duel, but he lost bad. Which is pretty fucking funny. So there's, like I said, he had a couple purported masters. The one more generally accepted is Seigen, right? Which is potentially why he may have used the Nodachi in particular. But the reason why his last name is Sasaki is that there's kind of two stories here, right? It's either that his mother was a member of the Sasaki clan and had him out of wedlock, or that she was unaware she was pregnant when she married into the Sasaki clan. And either way, he was raised in the Sasaki clan. So he and Miyamoto Musashi were both supposed to be unusually tall, based on traditional Japanese heights at the time. And when I say unusually tall, 5'10", which is my height. So
I'm taller than them.
Go fuck yourself. I tried so hard to make it to 6 feet. This is why I wear heels.
I didn't make it to 6 feet either. I'm like 5'11".
That sounds wrong. Both you and Realm, and even Vorn are...
Realm definitely passed 6 feet.
Yeah, but you, Vorn, and Realm are all taller than me now. This is bullshit. I was taller when we were younger. Bullshit. So we already heard about how Musashi came 3 hours late, and he had just kind of crafted a wooden bookend, and Sasaki gets real mad at him. And so one of the things about Sasaki is he has this really famous move called Tsubame Gaeshi, or the swallow cut.
It's very famous. They referenced it in Prince of Tennis, apparently.
I was literally in stream talking about this the other day. Fuji Shusuke, one of the characters in Prince of Tennis. You might remember him because we did watch Prince of Tennis.
Not really.
Okay, it's been a while. Don't worry. I'll make them finish it after Fairy Tale. But Fuji Shusuke uses like 3 special moves, and one of them is Tsubame Gaeshi. And I think each of his special moves are based off of famous moves from Japanese history, because every single one of them is like a reference to something else, which is pretty fun. So there are, on Sasaki's side of the duel, there is some debate as to whether or not Musashi cheated using the environment to his advantage, and winning by unfair tactics. But at this point, it's been 400 years. Give it up. One of you ended up dead. That was the loser. Although the other one died nuts in a cave. So
I don't know who's really
the real loser.
I
don't actually mean he died nuts in a cave. I'm sure.
No, he died nuts in a cave.
Yeah, well, I'm trying not to be disrespectful to someone that people respect.
Well, art is often like mad. Like, we have plenty of stories of artists going mad. The man lived out the rest of his life in a cave while maintaining noble connections. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, so so that famous technique, right, Tsubame Gaeshi, was named that because it was supposed to mimic the motion of a swallow's tail as observed during flight, and it was so quick and precise it could strike down a bird in mid-flight. Which, 10 out of 10. That sounds pretty fucking cool. So, Sasaki Kojiro, that's not Assassin in Fate.
It
is Assassin in Fate Stay Night.
You've seen Sasaki Kojiro.
Yeah, okay. I've seen Sasaki Kojiro. I keep confusing him with Sakata Kintoki because of their names, I think, and the fact that I don't really use either one of them, but we have both of them. So every time I hear either of their names, I think of Assassin in Fate Stay Night, even though I've never seen Sakata Kintoki.
Let me tell you, you're not going to think they're the same in terms of design after you see them.
I'm actually going to take a slight detour from how I told you I was going to cover this in order. I'm going to talk about Takao Dayu.
Oh my god, that's the order I would have given it to you otherwise.
Oh, sorry.
I'm gonna bludgeon you with a boat oar.
Why? I don't see why. This is not a big thing. So, Takao Dayu was a very high-ranking courtesan of the Yoshiwara district of Edo. Remember, we talked about Yoshiwara before when we were talking about Miyamoto Musashi. I mentioned it. She was one of the most famous courtesans of the Edo period. She lived from about 1640 to 1659. And she was the leading courtesan of the great Miura, which was the most prestigious brothel of the day. And honestly, she became the leading courtesan in all of Yoshikawa. So she was one of several courtesans to hold the inherited name of Takao, and is famous for her affair with the daimyo, Tsunemune, right? Date Tsunemune. And her story is heavily featured in kabuki, all over the place. And I've actually seen a kabuki performance of this before on YouTube. It's really impressive. I think. So speaking of art forms, by the way, I like this whole theme we've got. Like, we've really got this kind of art and war theme going on with this video across the different people we're talking about. But I think that's pretty fucking cool. So, according to her portrayals in literature, Date Tsunemune, the young daimyo, visited her as a result of a dispute with family politics, because his uncle wanted to replace him with his own son, and so he kind of encouraged him to do awful things. But she rejected him, as she had promised to marry her lover when her contract ended. He offered to buy out her contract by paying a weight in gold equal to her, and the owner weighed her sleeves down with iron until she weighed over 160 pounds. And he still paid her weight in gold, buying her out of her contract. On the boat ride to his home, though, according to one version, she tried to leap into the river to escape him.
Feels bad, bro.
Yeah, and he flew into a rage and killed her with his own blade. And then his uncle did use the murder to force him into retirement so that his son could take over like he planned. In another version, though, she refused him, even though he bought her freedom, and he broke one of her finger for each day for 10 days and then had her taken and hanged. Which is horrifying. What the fuck?
Thankfully, that story is probably not true.
No, abso-fucking-lutely. Like, even though this story is technically based on a historical story, there's a lot of inaccuracy and difference. The major thing comes with her death at his hands. Contemporary historical sources describe her as dying from tuberculosis or potentially pneumonia at the age of 19. And
a still young and tragic death.
Yes. And the Takabyobu Kudai Monogatari, or the Tales of Grumbling Otokodate, written in 1660, which would have been contemporary to her, adds that several of her former suitors held a memorial and bought her a tombstone after she died, but were, also criticized for not helping her while she was dying of sickness. Another inaccuracy comes with Tsunemune. He had already given up his position by the time that he had encountered her. This was not a ploy by his family members to seize power from him. And then also the relationship between the two of them is not accurate. There's no evidence that she intended to marry someone else at any point. But she also wasn't really interested in him. And like the love letter that people base this story on has been proven to be a forgery. So, no. You're wrong.
Thankfully, it was a more natural tragic death, not a...
Yeah. Which is unfortunate, but it makes sense. We already know that tuberculosis was quite prevalent in kind of the Edo period, like the late Sengoku period.
She's not
the
exactly,
Edo period.
As a courtesan, she's not exactly the high upper class here.
Mm-hmm. And as a courtesan, if no one's showing the obvious signs, you don't turn them away for sickness, and you may not know that they're sick. Also, there's not as much protection for, keeping the sickness away at this point in history in Japan, because we've already covered another character with tuberculosis on this channel from Japan during the same time period, Okita Soji.
That would not have been contemporary.
No, you're right. My brain. But TB, once again.
Yeah, no, still tuberculosis, just
yeah.
Timelines.
Yeah. So technically still the Edo period. But
that's like the very beginning in the very end.
I know. Fucking Edo period. So the other person you gave me to cover, and I know why you gave me Iori to cover, is because Iori is the main protagonist of Samurai Remnant.
Yes.
Isn't he? Yeah? Okay, so Iori was adopted in 1623 by Miyamoto Musashi when his father was living in Edo.
I have a page open.
Oh, yeah, I forgot.
I don't know if there's anything worthwhile on there, though.
Not much.
Look at his beautiful face.
So he's Musashi's nephew, right? So technically he is related. He became a vassal of Ogasawara Tadazane, who was a samurai daimyo of the early period. And he rose through his service pretty fast, entered at like the age of 15, and became an official vassal by 1632. He would have been like 20 years old. He was receiving like 2,500 koku and was one of his principal vessels. And within like 6 years after that, his salary had been increased significantly due to his efforts during the siege of Shimabara. And at only 26, he was kind of the highest ranked vassal of this particular lord, which is really interesting. That is a very... I would wonder if that rise to power was in part because of who he was related to or all from his own skills.
But we don't exactly have a lot on him.
No, we really do not. There's a couple different sources on him, but largely he is featured extremely heavily in a lot of anime and manga.
Because there's a lot of blanks to fill in there.
Yeah. And there's a lot to tell from around that period. And I mean, to be fair, because Miyamoto Musashi was so relatively famous, we do know a fair amount about some of his children, right? Which is good. And that's mostly what we know him from, is information about Musashi's children. Which is unfortunate. Once again, record your children, record your lives. Everyone should write their own autobiography. I mean, maybe not, but, you know. He also did live to ripe old age. I mean, he didn't exactly die young. Lived out his life as a high-ranked vassal of Ogasawara.
Yep.
Yeah. What's up?
So, if you want to move on to our first one, we'll start with Miyamoto Musashi. Meet Miyamoto Musashi.
Somehow, that's so underwhelming.
Well,
I don't know why.
I can tell you why.
Why?
This old guy is not ever playable as a servant, but appears in various backstories as a side character with some fun stylized art of him.
I mean, it's interesting art. I like it.
Yeah. Fate typically depicts him in his old age towards the end of his life. Key distinction of Fate's Musashi is that he didn't even get the chance to fight against the Shimabara Rebellion like he did in history. Instead, he arrived after it was already quelled, so just continuing to arrive late.
Oh, boy.
And the rock story is just
he was traveling.
Embellishment.
Yeah, he was busy. He was traveling.
In Fate, he also dabbled in magecraft, taking on a talking book called the Crimson Codex.
Oh, boy.
This was because in some part he was a mage, kind of. There are mages that try not to reach the root, or the center of all creation, if you don't remember that. One of the names that Fate calls the root at, and I wouldn't recommend reading too much of this because some of it's going to get into spoilers.
Okay.
But I would some of the names that the root is known as in Fate is the Void, which that's one of the translations for the last book of his.
Yeah, the translation for the 5th book, which I have as Expanse, but some other people translate as Void.
And they tie that directly into here, where
Interesting.
that's kind of the last thing he was trying to use. He was trying to reach the root using martial arts.
Interesting. Okay.
He was, in his teachings, ultimately the idea was that he wanted to make it so his sword could cut into the void itself. There's not a record in Fate that he achieved it in the way that would satisfy most mages, but we do know that he could cut into the void.
Okay.
We don't know how he would be as a servant, except that his noble phantasm would be called Or Wooden Sword and would be derived from his duel with Sasaki Kojiro.
Yeah.
Where he used the 2 wooden swords carved from a boat oar.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is
Vulcan.
Musashi. If you want to scroll down, you can look for pictures if you want.
Oh, this is from Samurai Remnant?
Because there's going to be a few in here.
Oh, okay. Interesting. The 2 swords. Yeah, there's Assassin. I know he's... Yeah. Lung cancer. That's thoracic cancer. Makes sense. I take a look at... So
that down here, that's a portrayal of him from the Shimosa manga.
Oh, interesting. Is it him in the cave?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, we see a lot of him in the cave.
Yeah. Yeah, I can tell. Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, just avoid looking at, like, reading too much into things.
If I click into this... Okay. All right. I just wanted to see if... All right, so... Oh, okay, so Rei Wataru is the Samurai Remnant illustrator. We talked about this with something else, and I don't remember what.
I don't know, but this artist also does the Shimosa manga, which is probably the best drawn Fate manga right now.
Okay. I see how... Oh, so they've only done, like, one character for Fate Grand Order. Fujiwara no Michinaga?
Because this is an artist that was only recently brought into Fate because of the Shimosa manga. It was just so good, they put them as the lead artist for Samurai Remnant.
And they designed all the character designs for Samurai Remnant.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So we'll be seeing quite a few of them over the next 2 years, 3 years while we're working on.
Yep.
Interesting. All right.
So next we're going to go jump right into Sasaki Kojiro.
Yes.
This is a face you remember and can trust.
The cardboard cutout.
Yeah. So if you want to see his FGO stuff, I have it in the next tab over.
Yes, I would like to. I will say, I do really like Sasaki Kojiro's design. I think he looks really nice. You know what I mean? Like in all versions. But I know he's got some funky stuff going on with him.
Yeah. So this is a tricky one, especially as of late. Kojiro in Fate Stay Night is stated to not actually exist and is instead a fiction crafted by Musashi.
First of all, love the purple theme going on there. I love purple. It's one of my favorite colors, so I'm loving that. Second of all, we had talked about Sasaki Kojiro before, and I don't remember when or where, but I remember we had talked about it. And he's not exactly a one-to-one, this is Sasaki Kojiro. There's some fucky stuff going on here.
Yeah, because Fate says that he just didn't exist. He was he was this hypothetical swordsman that Musashi just wrote about.
Exactly.
Which I don't know if that lines up historically. I assume it doesn't.
Yeah.
But when summoned as a servant, he's more of someone who also achieved his Tsubame Gaishi and had the story of Sasaki Kojiro sort of grafted onto him. It's a very bold and hilarious claim to make for Kojiro of all people when Fate firmly states that King Arthur and Heracles existed as written.
Right. Like, you had the person who actually has historical records attributing to him his existence as like the chief retainer of this actual lord in a relatively recent historical period that one can kind of trust records from. I'm just saying. Oh, look, we have a likes and dislikes for him.
Yep.
Okay, so flowers, birds, wind, the moon, using his sword, dislikes ugliness of the heart.
It is what it is, though, but at the end of the day, we also know that in some timelines he may have existed, so it's not every timeline he was fake. Just because, wibbly wobbly, timey wimey.
It's just a big ball of wibbly wobbly, timey wimey stuff.
Yeah. Kojiro actually gets summoned by someone in Fate Requiem, and he chooses not to go by Sasaki Kojiro, instead goes by the name Tsuda. My crackpot theory is that this guy, the guy who Sasaki Kojiro was grafted onto, that his name is actually Tsuda, but that's just my crackpot theory.
Okay, I mean, it sounds legit.
But regardless of how he's supposed to be historically, supposedly there was a nameless samurai that existed at the same time as Musashi, knew how to use Tsubame Gaishi, and may have dueled Musashi.
Okay.
So it's confusing.
Yeah, okay.
In Samurai...
I mean, it's certainly a choice for Fate to just go, Heracles is real, but this one, nah.
Nah.
Totally not.
Though I do find it hilarious that it's Musashi of all people.
It really is.
That gets drawn into doubt. In Samurai Remnant, he actually might exist. And instead of being killed by Musashi, he survived the duel, just losing it. And in this timeline, we know for a fact that even after Musashi's death, he went and visited Musashi's grave. There's some other aspects to that. I have my own crackpot theories about what might be going on there. But not something we need to get into. Canonically, if summoned, he shouldn't actually be assassin. This was entirely a product of Fate's Stay Night.
Yeah, he's supposed to be a saber.
Yeah.
Question: What is this fucking Fate Tiger Coliseum?
It's a gag fighting game, I believe.
Okay, I'm looking through the non-FGO stuff because I figure I might not get to see it later. So
I could be wrong. It might not be a gag fighting game, but it's a gag thing.
Okay.
Tiger Call scene being the result of Taiga doing something, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, yeah, that would make sense. Yeah! He's so cute. With his little hobo camp.
He kind of looks like a character from a yaoi. Am I wrong?
Like this?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, 100%. This is like a feudal era Japanese yaoi. I've seen this, I'm certain.
So, yeah, you can scroll through his relationships if you want.
Oh, yeah, I have relationships. Okay. Once again, I'll read the quotes out loud, but if it's not a quote, I'll just read it myself. He does not like Medea. I mean, makes sense. I can understand why. I get it. Medea Lily. What karma is this? I can't believe I was fated to meet that trickster of a woman again. What's more, that caster, she's a little... Actually, she's like a completely different person now. I hate to admit it, but she's quite lovely.
I mean, but the trauma that having your ribcage split open by someone does.
Yeah. No, I'm not the true Kojiro. I've never met this master swordsman. I suppose that's why they say the truth is stranger than fiction. I feel as if I'd like to go up against him, but at the same time, perhaps not. Ooh, Martha! She is unaffected and sincere, while filled with fortitude and vigor, truly excellent. Her attitude, too, is dignified and centered, steady and unwavering. However, that briskness of her is one true flaw. Ouch! Did he get a Tarrasque kicked at him or punched in the face?
Probably punched to the face.
Yeah, I will say, he does have one of the... full stop here. He has one of the coolest appearances in Fate Stay Night, right? Like, for all that Fate Stay Night was, like, shit. He has one of the coolest appearances and an amazing fight scene with Artoria, right?
In the original?
Yeah. Like, that was actually, like, amazing in the original. I mean, it's amazing in Unlimited Blade Works, too. But kudos to them for actually making it good in Stay Night, considering Stay Night was kind of shit. You know? Especially because in Stay Night, during this fight scene, it's where we get Excalibur screamed out. So it's the first time we know.
No, she doesn't quite scream it out there.
Was it not during the fight scene?
No, Saber's first time screaming out Excalibur is against Medusa. In Unlimited Blade Works, she prepares to use Excalibur, but she doesn't get it all. I think in both she prepares, but she does. In Unlimited Blade Works, the fight's interrupted, and in Stay Night, she doesn't release it in full, and it nearly kills her.
Oh. Okay. All right. It's not how I remember it, but okay.
You also nearly fell asleep during this fight.
No.
You were awake. This was when you were awake for.
This is when I was awake.
But you were starting to conk out. I know the cycles of Sekhie falling asleep during a TV show.
I don't have a great ability to stay awake during something I'm not that interested in. Okay. I'm just kind of... Yeah. I can look at things. Okay. I skip through the FGO shit. God, there's so much. Other appearances. He was featured in Tank Man.
Tank Man. So he is a... Oh, yeah, that's not a yaoi. It's a gender bend, so it's not quite a yaoi.
Alright, I'm in abilities now.
So, as an assassin, he is exceptionally weak with little in the way of presence concealment. The only concealment he really has is that it's hard to tell that he's a servant at all. Mm-hmm. He holds no noble phantasm in the weapon sense, but has very little magical signature. But he is exceptionally skilled as a swordsman, being probably the best at combat in the Grail War, as seen in Fate Stay Night, going toe-to-toe with Artoria, who, unlike Kojiro, actually has magical items in a class that can function with her. With Shiro holding her down, it was only Shiro that was holding her down, but they were on about equal footing because of that. Mm-hmm. But that's not all for Fate Stay Night. He is notable for being able to repel all 5 other servants other than he and Medea. Mm-hmm. This includes Heracles and Ku. Of course, Ku and Heracles had the tools they could have used to kill him if they were allowed to do it, or didn't want to avoid being picked off by Medea right afterward. Mm-hmm. Had he been a saber, he'd probably be exceptionally dangerous with the stat boons that the class would offer.
Yeah, I can see that.
In one instance in FGO, he actually was summoned as a saber, But it's the same design and virtually identical, so for purposes of the reacts, it's not really worth going into.
Okay.
It's just likely a much stronger version of himself.
Okay. So, I'm looking at some of the skills. I see presence concealment because he's an assassin.
Yeah.
But, mind's eye fake. He's got like a predictive premonition sense. Okay. Knowledge of the Sowa. Okay. Vitrification. All right. Okay. And Noble Phantasm, Tsubame Gaeshi.
Yep. This isn't a Noble Phantasm by all definitions, but his Noble Phantasm, it is his Noble Phantasm when push comes to shove. It's incredibly efficient and requires no magical energy to use, meaning he can employ as many times as he wants in a war. It's also a Noble Phantasm that, like Guy Bolg, is almost a guaranteed hit and a likely kill.
Oh. So, Nameless Saber down here, this is the
Saber version that you see in Shimosa. Like I said, same design, pretty much same everything, just a little bit different.
No, absolutely the same. Everything. Okay. I am going to take a look at
the character artist.
Yes, there's two. So, Takashi Takeuchi. Oh, I know Takeuchi.
Yeah, he just did all of the original Fate Stay Night. He might have had a different artist in FGO.
Yeah, okay, so he did a lot of people. And a lot of people we've seen, actually. Because we've already talked about MASH. We've talked about Artoria, Zhuge Liang, Ku Cullen, Jeanne d'Arc.
Is the Type Moon artist.
Yeah, Okita's... Oh, shit, yeah. No, we've talked about most of the servants he's designed, which is interesting. Okay. All right. That other Oxamata. All right. So in Fate Grand Order, Mata designs Ku Caster, Diarmid Lancer, Bartholomew Roberts, and Sasaki Kojiro.
Fucking cat.
Hang on, I gotta pick some stuff up.
You're good. Meow. Meow.
Well, she's got something against my Fate manga.
I mean, do you blame her?
Okay. No, we're gonna be having words. However, I did actually need that. And it's a good thing she found that for me because I did actually need those.
What is that?
Character sheets for a game I'm running soon.
Ooh.
That I designed. Alright. Oh, God. Okay. Alright. Okay. So, you've got NPs for me?
Yep, so this is from one of the fighting games.
Okay.
Unlimited codes.
Nice.
Watch, it'll be blink and you miss it.
Oh.
And there it is. That's the NP.
Hey, it's somehow more impressive that it's just like...
Very quick, very simple.
The simplest of like martial ability. But at its absolute peak. Do you know what I mean?
This is his updated Noble Phantasm in FGO. Yep.
Nice.
Very quick, very easy.
Alright.
So it's now time to get complicated.
Oh boy.
So if you click into the next tab, meet Miyamoto Musashi again.
Oh boy. Hold on, I'm gonna close out of some stuff. Alright.
So you can click into the designs if you want to see her other designs. But there's a lot going on here. As obvious evident as the Musashi I just showed you was clearly not a woman.
I was gonna say that, yeah, very clearly not a woman. And sword.
So this is the Miyamoto Musashi from FGO.
Yeah.
She is often called the female Musashi and is explicitly not from FGO's main timeline.
Okay.
Instead,
and this is not the Miyamoto Musashi from Remnant, right?
There's two that are seen in Remnant.
Oh, okay. Never mind then.
Because Remnant takes place right after the death of Miyamoto Musashi.
Yeah.
So instead of being from the main timeline, she's from a pruned timeline like the Lost Belts we've been covering. So like this, I think specifies that she is Miyamoto Musashi Lost Belt.
Okay.
Basically, there was a glitch in the world, and she became a walking singularity like Amakusa Alter, if you remember our Amakusa Shiro episode.
Yeah.
In her original world, she would still do a few things that are attributed to her, like take on some orphans, including Iori, but presumably she would do a lot of this at a much younger age.
Mm-hmm.
Notably, as a woman, she was treated harshly by her father, Shinmen Munisai, and he would disown her because of her gender.
Oh.
She would then proceed to continue with the sword and build a hut right in front of his property despite him. She notably has a huge love for udon, which more on what that love for udon leads to later.
I see that. Dislikes whoever attacks her when she's hungry.
She would eventually get separated from her world during its pruning and would wander between worlds in different time periods, engaging duels and seeing the sights. Mm-hmm. At one point, she ended up in the American West and engaged in a sword versus pistol duel, coming out on the other side the victor.
With who?
We don't know exactly.
Lovely.
She didn't...
Okay, she did it in the box.
She didn't really understand it until she came to meet Or she didn't really understand her world hopping until she came to meet the protagonist of FGO on an island called Onigashima. There she would discover that she's existentially homeless and would come to accept her situation, continuing her travels. Mm-hmm. She would once again wander for a while before coming into contact with the protagonist again in the Shimosa Singularity. There she would achieve what her proper human history counterpart did and learn to cut into the void, mastering her own sword techniques. These sword techniques, though, would end up notably flashier than the regular Musashis. Mm-hmm. It's also notable that she makes an effort to protect the innocence of some children she was watching, trying to shield their eyes and ears from the atrocities being committed by the villains around them. Mm-hmm. She would eventually come to engage in a duel with the summoned Sasaki Kojiro Saber, where she would effectively win, dealing a blow to his spirit core, but would herself be mortally wounded and die.
Yeah.
At this point, she was 100% human, and she only becomes a servant after this. Mm-hmm. After this, she would be summoned to Chaldea as a Saber-class servant, where she would wander in and out of the story, still being pulled between worlds. We'll get into some of the other adventures as we go on through the alts, but it's worth noting that as of now, she is one of only 2 known servants, to my knowledge, to ever canonically be permanently, in air quotes, killed off.
Okay.
At this point, she cannot be resummoned, and if I open up my FGO and go to her profile page right now and show you, it says data lost.
Oh.
This can potentially change in the future, but at this point, she has been dead for around 3 to 4 years. And I have no soul going around 1 to 2 years when this happened in NA. So, as a final note, I'll mention that she is intensely and incredibly sexually repressed. I thought this was a fadeism until you brought it up earlier with the male Musashi.
Yeah.
She foregoes it because it would be a distraction from her swordsmanship.
Yep.
But she is known to have moments of clear simpery. There's a reading of her that people sometimes make that she likes shotas, but that's never been explicitly true and beyond just some awkward writing and art style mismatches. Because you've seen those where, like, they'll describe a servant as being, oh, this servant is blah, blah, blah old. Well, you look like a 16-year-old.
Helena Blavatsky.
Yeah, well, no, that one's just a child.
Oh.
But it's undeniable she is repressed horny, at one point having an actual, oh no, he's hot reaction to one of the main villains of the story.
Who?
You haven't met him yet.
Can you tell me the name?
If I told you the name, you wouldn't know who that is if I told you his real name or the name he was going by at the time.
Damn. Interesting.
But like Deadass was like, come out here and show your ugly mug. Shows his ugly mug. Oh
no. He's hot.
Yeah.
Alright, so I've got relationships open. Also a fun little, a one-sided massacre. Trampling on people's dignity, convictions for fun. Stealing my food when I'm hungry. I get that. That's a mood. Alright, so Miyamoto Iori. Okay. Sasaki Kojiro. Huh. Kojiro. Really? What's that? Does such a Kojiro exist? I'm not talking about strong or weak, but he's pretty much reached the void. Oh, I get it. It's just a tanuki who disguised itself. When we faced off against each other, he told me he had no name, but so this person is Sasaki Kojiro. He looks as dandy as the rumors said, but this sir looks like he doesn't care about anything besides the sword. Well, I'm one to talk. This noble...
Not the same mouse.
This noble phantasm was developed to defeat a certain genius swordsman who crossed my path in my life once. I can't beat this guy using orthodox tactics. It's a pain, so I'll just drive him towards the center of the island and blow the entire island up. And that's the dark secret of how I won using a strategy that was absolutely, totally fair. Yeah, that's right. I don't know why I remembered such a thing when I saw your face, Lord Kojiro. That's not fair. You a bitch. That red saber, you know, the one wearing the velvet formal wear. Though she's not my type, I feel some strange kinship with her. I guess I should kill her when I have the chance. Grandpa Muramasa, are you sure you can fight? Well, I know you're strong, but please don't push yourself too hard because, you know, you have a weak back. Ouch! I assume she got hit over the head for that comment.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you Munenori. I see him fighting sitting down, and yeah, we can tell our instructors were different. I can't do it. My legs get numb. He's like a wise elder, and I think he's got that personality that never stops once he decides to do something. Alright, should I invite him to an udon tent sometime? I was really looking forward to meeting Shana Oh, but that's a girl. Give me back my Ushiwakamaru. To think that a famous samurai is a girl. There's something wrong with this world. I came here to see the Shana Oh I always admired, but all I found was some girl. But that works just fine. If only I were 4 years younger. I like Ushiwakamaru. Go fuck yours. Ooh.
Okay, but don't tell me you haven't had that reaction to some servants before.
That's true. Minamoto no Raiko. So she's the samurai general from the Genji clan? Yeah, I get it. She's a force to be reckoned with. A demonic deity that is beyond human. Spectacular like Gozu Tenno. Truly amazing. That size. I do love Minamoto no Raiko, so... Ooh, swimsuit. Even the samurai general of the Genji is wearing a swimsuit? That's a pretty refined look. Even her face is properly concealed. Though the other areas aren't as concealed. They're so big, they look like they're going to pop out. Okay. Just double checking. Alright. Yay, Danzo is here. I may not be the right person to say this, but a classic black-haired beauty is hard to come across these days. Come on, come closer. Closer. I don't care if she's all nuts and bolts. Actually, I'm more excited this way because she's like a girl's day doll. Okay, demon servants. I never imagined the legendary Oni would be so beautiful. I was born in the wrong era. I can tell the Simpin. It comes through. Hozuin. Okay. This must indeed be fate. Once again, take good care of me. Lord Inshun should also be in a swimsuit. I wish I could see a monk in a loincloth. Girl, you need to chill. Ashia Domon, you got some nerve showing yourself in front of Master. Master, you shouldn't trust that good for nothing. Osaka Behime, I heard you were still shutting yourself inside your room, so here I am. It's not every day that you got a cute girl with you, so staying at the attic is a no-no. Let's do some exercise. Good. Osaka Behime's here too, and she's got good taste for liking survival games. I'm so happy she found friends who can play games with her. Huh? Just one friend? And the rest are paper? Is that so? I could play with you if you'd like. Okay.
Oh god, the Sparrowing incident. So at one point, Musashi ends up in the Sparrowing, which if you remember is like the Benyenma's little like Spirited Away area.
Yeah.
Musashi ends up kind of cursed in a hot spring where she becomes a malevolent spirit that just wants to see handsome men naked.
Lovely. Alright. Miss Crane. Okay. Katsushika Hokusai. Artoria, alright. I can't believe that Queen has become a bunny girl. Yeah, this is Las Vegas. She needs to take it that far. I regret everything. A defeat of spirit. I love this. Wait. What happened? Where did I go? Where was I? I think I went down. Yeah, I went down on accident.
What did it say?
Jesus. Whoa, is that my soul's twin? Oh, I've heard of this. It's called Saint Basing, right?
They have that line and they have yet to use it, I think.
Yeah, it doesn't... it doesn't tell me who it's in regards to.
That is making you so nervous.
Wouldn't it make you nervous too?
Nah.
Imagine if my mouse was sitting here and you heard it click.
Your mouse isn't sitting there.
Alright. I can look at art. Alright.
So, ability-wise, hang on, I'm in the wrong Musashi. She actually possesses a mystic eye called the Heavenly Eye that allows her to see different possibilities. This is how she ended up between worlds in the first place. Each time she uses it to jump between a different world, the amount of worlds she can see decreases. The only one she seems to be able to return to is the FGO world, and it's usually via hopping into its many lost belts and singularities. She uses this eye to identify a winning play in fights. Otherwise, she makes use of the Niten Ichiryu and the battle philosophies that would comprise the Book of the Five Rings. Like the
strategies and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like the many stories of the fight with Kojiro, says she's also willing to play a little dirty in order to win.
I see battle continuation, emptiness. Oh, I didn't ask what class she is.
She's a saber.
Okay. I assumed so, but magic resistance. There's the Heavenly Eye, the Book of Five Rings. Fifth Force. This is the advantage of using two swords. So NPs. Yes. 6 realms, 5 rings. The divine figure of Kurikara.
Yeah. So.
Or Ishana Daitensho.
Yeah, so partially as a way to get back at her dad, she early on focused on reaching the concept of the void, much earlier than Musashi would normally write about it. She would develop a technique called the Kengo Bato Itana Daitensho. This plays into her Noble Phantasm, which makes use... this ends up being used in her Noble Phantasm as well. Here she draws on divine power with her swordplay that cuts into her opponent on a spiritual level. One watching it would even be able to perceive the avatar of the god Tenjin.
And by the way, I just read the little quote in Battle Continuation. If I win at the end, I'm the winner, right? That's why I have to run away now. After all, if I'm dead, I can't win at the end, can I? You know what this reminds me of? You know who she reminds me of?
Who?
Jack Sparrow. We fight to run away. But also just traveling all over and in the lecherous... It really reminds you of Jack Sparrow, doesn't it?
A little bit.
Even got the... It really does.
She has 2 other Noble Phantasms. She has the Ore Wooden Sword, though it's unknown what this Noble Phantasm actually does. It's listed in her profile, but she doesn't actually have the wooden swords. So it could be a technique we just don't know. And then the other one she has is the Ganryujima.
So the explosion on the island?
Yeah, this is a secret technique that Musashi saves specifically for blatantly evil swordsmen using sorcery. Nobody knows what it looks like besides Musashi, and we will revisit this a little bit later.
All right.
So I have FGO and an arcade for you.
Okay. The true essence of the 5 rings. Which, speaking of, I've seen this on a few Japanese characters, but so she's wearing that half of the yin and yang on her neck made of jade. Is that supposed to be the famous Jade Magatama or something?
I'd have to take a look, and I don't know. I don't think I would know.
Oh yeah, there's the god. Damn. Calligraphy and everything. This is a recent update. Or recent introduction. Because that looked way better than some of the older servants we've talked about.
Yeah. Well, she's around year 2 or 3. I will say that's not the only version of that Noble Phantasm, but I didn't show it to you because it's only a little bit different. There's another one where during the final slash of the attack, there's a little anime, when the screen splits. That's supposed to be a cut into the void. I didn't pull it up here. Actually, I didn't even know if it'd be in here. I could pull it up if you really wanted to see it, but it's not that different.
I was right. Jade Magatamas. They're kind of have been popular through a lot of Japanese history, but it's part of the yin yang carved into jade, essentially. Which, I thought so. All right.
I wonder if arcade will do it.
What?
The extra effect.
ごめんやり直しサーバントセイバー新面武蔵ここに水産面白おかしく過ごさせてねマスターいざ南天満台自在展示いよう栗から
Big man.
小天使行くぞ剣豪バットイシャナ大戦争
That's the effect.
Ah, interesting. Fun.
So, next we're going to move on to one of those little misadventures of Musashi. So we have a
Saber!
summer. So this one's a berserker now.
Oh. I meant to yell out summer, and I yelled out saber, and then you were like, it's a berserker, and I was like, damn. Wrong. Oh, God.
America!
Fuck yeah.
So this is Musashi's summer form. And
Udon!
yes. This entire form is the result of one of Musashi's many, many misadventures. Basically, while wandering near the Grand Canyon, she had a huge problem. Mm-hmm. She was craving udon.
I get it. I really do. I get it.
And then she found what she needed. A holy grail. So to satisfy both the craving
wished upon it
and a morbid curiosity, she decided to make udon using the holy grail as her pot.
God.
Not even wishing on the holy grail.
No, just use the holy grail.
As a pot.
Did it make the flavor better?
And then she enjoyed some wonderful udon.
Oh, okay.
It was a mistake.
Oh, dear.
This ordeal split her into two. One half, the uncontrolled wild self, and the other half, her logical sword brain.
Uh-huh.
At first, she decided to just go ahead and leave what she called the Tenma Musashi to her own devices and just move on, and the Tenma Musashi is that logical sword brain.
Mm-hmm.
But the Tenma Musashi would have gone on to cause great disasters. So with the help of Merlin, she sealed away the Tenma Musashi, knowing that it was only a truly powerful saber could defeat it. And she could not, because she's a berserker now.
Is this the gun sword you gave to Realm?
No.
Aw, damn. Well, I mean, like, similar to, though. Because gun sword.
I can see that. It wasn't based directly on that, though.
Okay. Also,
So,
what the fuck's she wearing Tivas for?
what?
She's wearing Tivas.
Well, I don't know.
Okay.
So she and Merlin established a servant Las Vegas with a lot of casinos, one of which was the Meltrilus casino we mentioned last time.
Oh, yeah.
And then they used the guise of an existing event called the Las Vegas Tournament of the Seven Swimsuit Blade Masters. They held a regulation sword dueling event where the winner would be tasked with fighting and defeating the Tenma Musashi.
Mm-hmm.
Likely out of a sense of embarrassment and also probably on a level of her, because she had her diminished reason given by the class, she chose to go by her protege's name, Miyamoto Iori, for the tournament to try and cover up her own part in it. Of course, nobody besides the winner of the tournament, Hokusai, actually bought that story.
Yeah.
This, of course, was resolved after a final regulation sword duel against the Tenma Musashi.
Nice.
So, as far as abilities go, she'll switch between using sports foam swords
I noticed.
and actual blades, depending on the ascension. Otherwise, she's primarily the same fighter, making use of a few more flashy tricks than her saber self would.
Okay. I see that she plagiarized Ishtar for
which
SL
one?
turn.
Oh, she might have, yeah.
Yeah, it says she watched Summer Ishtar's skill and copied it. Fifth serving. All right. Same as the fifth force, but slightly different. Okay. Heavenly demonic thundering eye. Fun.
So her noble phantasm is the Ganryujima. It's this thing again.
Yeah.
This time she's willing to use a version of it and seems to draw on it at least to call on seawater to trap the opponent as she goes in for an attack. She is more willing to draw on this power, mostly due to her becoming a berserker. It's still not entirely clear what the noble phantasm itself is supposed to be.
Fun. All right. So this is her summer artist. All right.
America.
Design Lancelot's armor in Fate Zero. He does weapons for noble phantasms, a bunch of them. Okay, in Fate Grand Order, he's the character designer for Romulus, Lancelot Berserker, Matahari, Medea Lily, Skahak, Skadi, and Kirshtaria Wodime.
That's the figure you saw.
Oh, yeah! Yeah.
We'll cover him one day.
Yeah. Alright. So, Noble Phantasms for me?
Yep.
Cool. Musashi of the Niten Ichiru, ready for a wild American summer. So America. Fuck yeah. Love the two different shoes. That has got to be uncomfortable. Is she just screaming, say, bah?
I think so.
Did she just jump on top of a... Yeah, she did. A jet ski. Jet ski. So is there any rhyme or reason to what they show up wearing in Arcade? Versus
No,
FGO?
they just pick an outfit. And also, FGO has the 3 different Ascensions. Arcade has those same ones.
Okay.
It's just whatever they decide to use for the trailers and the promotional material.
Alright, just wondering. I love the pool noodle swords. They look fun. But, like, we both know the pain of getting smacked full in the face by a fucking pool noodle as hard as someone can. Is she fighting Hokusai?
Yep.
Impressive. That's a pretty cool... Okay. So we're moving on to Takao Dayu?
Yeah, so at that point, this would have been where we would have stopped if Samurai Remnant had not been announced after we had scheduled this.
Yeah.
So this is Takao Dayu.
Yes, beautiful.
So going forward, I will warn the audience here that this video is going to contain heavy Samurai Remnant spoilers.
Yep.
So Dayu here was, like in history, a high-ranking courtesan in the Yoshiwara, commanding a lot of status and respect. She would find herself drawn into the Waxing Moon ritual, which is a recreation of the Holy Grail War, as one of the masters.
Okay.
Her ultimate goal was to use the Grail, or a favor from one of her alliances, to free the many girls trapped by poverty in the Red Light District and allow them to leave.
Aww.
Basically, she wanted to end the sex trade.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She would ally herself with 2 opposing factions at once during this war. The first was the head Omyoji Tsuchimikado, a descendant of the Omyoji that vanquished Tomomo no Mae. And the other was Musashi's adopted son, Miyamoto Iori.
Yeah, who's the main master that you're playing as.
Yep. She was not heavily invested in the plans of Tsuchimikado and was perfectly willing to act against him as soon as things began to go too far from him. Favors be damned. She would summon Berserker of that war, but beyond that, she would also bond with one of the 8 rogue servants, specifically the one tied to Yoshiwara, the Rogue Berserker, who we will cover one day, I'm sure.
Okay.
She would allow them both great amounts of freedom and mostly acted as a negotiator of their alliances.
Okay. All right. So you take me to...
Yep, we're back to Musashi again.
Berserker!
So, it's probably obvious, but the servant that she summoned was Miyamoto Musashi.
God damn. There's the Magatama again.
Yep.
This is a really cool design.
Yeah, so this is her newest design.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
So this is the exact same Musashi from FGO. The summoning was unorthodox and arguably not a summoning as much as Musashi claiming the spot in the war upon arrival. But Musashi would take on the Berserker class and is likely why Musashi defaulted to the Berserker class during the Tenma Musashi incident.
Oh.
Making things even more likely that the summoning was improper is the fact that there was an extra rogue servant in the war not originally accounted for. I imagine this was partially Musashi's fault.
Okay.
But that's another story for another time. Needless to say, she and Dayu get along great, as Dayu is supportive of Musashi no matter what she wished to do or who she wished to ally with during the war.
Yeah.
Musashi does not end up winning, but does get the opportunity to engage in more duels, which really
That's all she
isn't
wants.
that all that matters.
Yeah, that's all she wants in life. Of course.
So the abilities page is going to look very different because this is not quite FGO.
Yeah, I still see the class skills, but I get what you mean down here.
So this Musashi is remarkably similar to her Saber counterpart.
Mm-hmm.
Here she takes things less seriously, so she employs more openly the 5 combat stances that she wrote about in the Book of 5 Rings.
Mm-hmm.
Usually she employs the theory more than the formal stance themselves, but in combat, here she's more laid back and is more than happy to use them at top form.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, she makes use of some abilities that she demonstrates in Summer as well. Like, I don't know if it was in there, but she had like the laser beam,
Yeah.
like, Japanese character thing. She uses that as well.
Okay.
Her Noble Phantasm is, once again, the 6 realms, 5 rings, the divine figure of Kumikara. It's the same NP as her Saber form, more or less.
Yeah. All right.
Go right ahead.
Okay.
Small little gameplay snippet, but it's effectively the length of one of our normal servant trailers.
That's fair. Snakes. Why does it have to be snakes? I don't mind snakes. I'm just quoting Indiana Jones. Why is it always snakes? Man, Nick Nack, you're really slacking. Why didn't you record some of your own streams for us to show?
Because my computer can't handle most shit.
I know.
So this is higher quality than I would get.
I'm mostly joking. However, without knowing who this is, I have seen them fight before. Because I do kind of watch the Remnant streams. Because I figure as long as I'm not looking at the names of characters, it's fine for me to watch, you know?
Boom.
Okay.
So, as you could tell, we're going to be moving on to a couple more characters here.
Yeah, Iori, namely.
We're going to move 2 characters technically, but you'll see who that is in a second.
Well, I clicked into Iori, so...
So, we're going to be covering 2 of Miyamoto Musashi's adopted children.
Mm-hmm.
The first one here is Miyamoto Iori, who is, as you remembered, the playable character of Samurai Remnant.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to click into the next tab, you can see the second one. Meet Osagawara Kaya. I've chosen not to pull up her wiki page, as she'll come up again one day, and in the future that page will contain spoilers for that day.
Okay.
But notably, the historical Musashi did have at least one adopted daughter, and Kaya was adopted. And so this is Fate's take on that.
Okay.
You'll notice that Kaya was adopted by the house that Iori in history would go on to serve, and that Musashi was retained to.
Yeah.
So if you want to go back to Iori's page, you can.
Can I close this?
Yeah.
Cool.
So these 2 are generally from a timeline closer to pan-human history, so their Musashi was male. But their timeline is notably distinct, as being pruned later on past the date at the point they were in the story. So things don't line up perfectly. Mm-hmm. In their own way, they are from a Lost Belt. Mm-hmm. I'm sure this will tie into an inevitable collab, so look forward to an update video one day in the future.
Yeah.
For more lore, but Iori has an expanded backstory here in Fate. Mm-hmm. Basically, Iori was from a coastal village that was raided by some bandits. Mm-hmm. He would end up orphaned and forced to be the tea-bearer to their Ronin leader. He would later be saved by, I believe, Miyamoto Musashi, and was so mesmerized by the Swordsmaster's slaughter of the bandits.
So we're not going with the nephew story here.
No.
Yeah.
That it would affect him for the rest of his life.
This would make sense, because you mentioned that in the game he doesn't read, right? Like he's not as well educated as
he's
you would
pretty
expect
well
him to
educated.
be?
No,
educated. Never mind. Okay, I thought you mentioned that he wasn't.
He just what came from the game is that he doesn't know all of foreign, like all the foreign stories.
Yeah.
Like some of those have to be told to him. Like he doesn't know certain servants when they're brought up. Like who?
Okay.
But he would be saved by Miyamoto Musashi, and Musashi saw the boy's fascination in swordsmanship and took him in, teaching him. Not out of love, but because he wanted to groom the boy to be his final duel, capable of taking his own life. Mm-hmm. That would never come to pass, though, and Musashi would later come to regret teaching Iori the way of the blade, lamenting that Miyamoto Iori was born in the wrong era. Mm-hmm. Not because his heart was kind in a rough era, but because Edo was an era of peace, and he was exceptionally good at what Musashi taught him. He had become a natural killer with no reason to kill.
Okay.
Musashi would not teach Iori to cut into the void and would instead try to direct Iori to living a peaceful life, sending Iori down the path of peace. In effect, telling him to find his own technique that can only be born during peace times. After Musashi's death, Iori would spend his life as a sword for hire, usually dealing with rowdy ronin. All while he scoured the land to learn new sword techniques that he could bring into his own technique in his path of peace. One notable of which we will cover later. He'd be watched over by Kaya, who would still visit him, and soon would even be on speaking terms with Musashi's Crimson Codex, the magic book I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Coming to know him as Gramps, and would later learn basic magecraft.
Okay.
This is where the timelines diverge. In proper human history, he comes to serve as a retainer in Kaya's house and lives the rest of his life as history says.
Yeah.
In another, where the small things shift around, he's forced to get involved with the waxing moon ritual. Here he would ally himself with the war's saber and meet the female Musashi. Over the course of the war, his killer instinct begins to come out. It becomes very clear that despite an outwardly friendly appearance and personality, he is somewhat sociopathic inside, using kindness as almost a clothing. He really only cares about his sister Kaya, and as time goes on, he does care about Saber too. By the end of the war, he's mastered the sword styles he learned and can go toe-to-toe with servants, meaning no mortal opponent is likely to ever be able to challenge him seriously.
Okay.
Toward the end of the war, he
Like me!
Yeah, not quite.
I'm kidding.
Towards the end of the war, he manages to defeat the female Musashi herself by using his secret technique, which he picked up after the male Musashi's death. So one of two things happens here. Either he, in one way or another, destroys the waxing moon. In this timeline, he is best described as a walking corpse, a zombie going through life with no purpose, as he will never again be challenged and will never develop or find happiness in anything else. Just waiting to finally die.
Yeah. Or
alternatively, he decides not to destroy it and instead use it to call forward opponents to fight, plunging the world into an effectively eternal war. There is no world where he succeeds at that, though. Jesus. At the end of the day, he is put down by Saber, who destroys the Grail. In this outcome, the two both die side by side, reaching something of an understanding, leaving Kaya alone to find Iori's dead body.
Aww. That's so sad.
There's a lot to unpack with his character and how it relates to the treatment of samurai. Because this is all supposed to be allegorical for the treatment of samurai in the Edo period.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah.
I actually really want to put out a video essay one day on the entire
relics of a bygone era.
Yeah, like the themes behind samurai, because there's a lot there. But
well, let me know if you want to. I absolutely would be totally willing to help you.
I'll let you know. Right now, I'm kind of trying to finish getting my editing more up to snuff with that to do what I would like to do with this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if you want to scroll down here, you can see some fun artwork.
Oh, I did already while you were talking.
So Iori,
I've taken to just doing it while you're talking because if I don't look at things, I start to read the Wikia and then I mention things before you get to them because I think that they're interesting because I read faster than you talk.
So Iori, as a disciple of Musashi, makes heavy use of her 5 basic forms. At the start of the story, he has mastered earth and water, but it's only later with the Crimson Codex's help that he gets wind down, and fire comes as he starts letting his killer instinct out. And then after pushing himself to a limit in a one-on-one fight with a servant, he masters the use of void stance, making him extremely deadly. His basic magecraft is fairly flexible, allowing him to heal injuries or often use fire-based attacks. He even picks up a few techniques from the many servants he comes across. But he has one technique that he keeps secret under wraps until his duel with Musashi. If you want to click into the next tab here, we'll get a little preview to that.
Oh, so I read it technically in the Wikia, but he learns the Tsubame Gaeshi from Sasaki Kojiro.
I thought you'd appreciate this because it's a very stylized little cutscene.
Yeah, I do love me some beautiful art cutscenes, you know? That's honestly the only reason why I'd want to play Remnant in particular over any other game, and why I'm partially tempted to get Remnant when I've got the time and a little bit of extra cash. Because I'm just I've seen some of the cutscenes, watching you play and stuff, and they look really nice. It looks like they've spent a lot on focused a lot on the story. You know what I mean?
It's practically a visual novel.
Yeah. Back to Ganryujima. The fucking oars.
藩の名誉をかけて試合した中でな。結果はこやつの見事な作戦待ちよ。天の断り地の断りのみならず、時の断りまで持ち込んでの。
So are they insinuating that Sasaki Kojiro didn't die at Ganryujima?
That's one of the insinuations. Another reading it here is Sasaki Kojiro in the scene is much younger than he really should be. My speculation, and this is one of my crackpot theories, is that Sasaki Kojiro, this isn't Sasaki Kojiro alive. This is a servant summoned for one purpose or another, and just happened to teach Iori here.
Okay.
俺を弟子に取っていただきたい。
何故？
武蔵が恐れた剣なれば。
If you want to click into the next one, we can see the outcome of that.
Okay.
So this is a cutscene usage of the sword,
Yeah.
or Tsubame Genshi.
My son, how you've grown. That's what it kind of feels like. Also, I did notice since he has two swords instead of like the three,
It's six instead of three.
Yeah.
And then we have the gameplay version of that here.
Okay. Ah, look, Gilgamesh.
And there you go.
I love Gilgamesh in samurai outfit.
So yeah, that is the Miyamoto Musashi video. A lot of covered here.
This is my favorite design by far that we've seen today. Like, this is beautiful. I love this. All right, so...
But what did you think of everyone as a whole here?
I think it's interesting. It is interesting that we start with actually like a male, like, historical Musashi. It feels kind of like, remember Oda Nobunaga? Where we had like the male design of him.
Except that one was entirely a gag character.
Yeah, except that was a gag, and this feels like more genuine. I mean, I like the characters. I think I like the stuff from Remnant the best, though, because it just seems like it has a really nice story to go along with it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And story trumps cool design most of the time for me. So, definitely like that the best. All right, so we've got 3 things to look at.
Yep, just Sekhie and the 2 Musashis.
All right, we'll start with Sekhie. Baseball. Look how happy. Oh, look at the split. Love that. All right. Yeah, somebody said look through the expression sheets. So if they'll load. Oh. Interesting. Oh, there's 2 more. Oh, is that like his NPC?
Yeah.
Okay. Alright. Extra art. Not much, just this sample stuff, which I'm not...
Surprisingly little for being an original Fate Stay servant.
Yeah, a little disappointed. Oh, fuck. Stop. It's doing the scroll thing. I hate that. I'm gonna be honest, this is why I don't use the press on the little button thing in normal life using the mouse.
Because if you don't click something, it locks you into the...
Yeah, somebody said to do it this way, and I've taken your advice because I know it's annoying when I was like left click, open a new tab. Do I know who that is?
No, you don't know who the other guy is.
Cool. Should I even look down at the translation? No. I should not. I think there were at least hints to who else it was. So
yeah.
I'll avoid that. All right. Heaven among the mountains. God, Jesus, fuck. Oh, my mouse hates me today. It's just not picking up anything that I wanted to do. All right. Cut ties to the ordinary world, praise desire as one living, aim for infinity as a swordsman. I have long ago forgot my own age, and I have long lost my own image. Training is my ordinary, tirelessly, continuously, endlessly. Before my end, I walked out into the woods and took a breath. His blade has finally reached the hollow moon. Interesting. Alright, hidden blade, pheasant reversal. There is no bird I cannot slay. There is no sword that can catch me. A nameless swordsman and a ninja. Sparks fly from their murderous stare. Only one will survive, and there are only enough dumplings for me.
Then just referencing the fucking swallow reversal.
Yep. Because it's pheasant reversal. Kiji Gaishi instead of Tsubame Gaishi. Alright. Full moon. Oh. Yum. A modest tea ceremony on a clear night. Even a goza mat and umbrella have been prepared. It's quite the tasteful setup considering it was put together by a ruffian. Unlike that which awaits on the far side of your bond, the atmosphere is rather warm. That's a nice return gift. Man's up there hiking his way through the mountains. Yeah, 3rd anniversary.
Does it have a full version?
No, not for the 3rd universe.
Okay.
It's the 7th that has the full layout images. But the 3rd anniversary also has them in like backgrounds all over the place. There's just these are, if you see how these are a lot more stylized, like these are obviously art.
But the ones where they have full photos
are actual places, yeah. Which kind of makes me want to go back through all the ones we've seen so far and identify the places, so maybe something to do in updates. Alright. Okay, it's travel journals. See, this one is in a real place. See, there's the photo behind him. So this should have had a full version, but I didn't see...
It's got a voice.
It is. I will check the voice. But it should have been here if it had a full version. And it's not. So some of them don't have it there.
いやはや絶景かな。今回は気長に待つとしよう。
Ah, what splendid scenery. I will wait patiently this time. The island where he was waiting 3 hours. Location, Ganryujima, Yamaguchi. Yeah, okay. That makes sense. I like it. Ephemeral silhouette. Oh, this is a stay night.
You know everyone.
I do. Artoria, Ku, Saseki. Yep. Nothing would have stopped them. There was so very much in that single blow. No shadow touched their dignity, their pride shone brightly. But even before their ominous fates became clear, the shadow began to blanket everything, like silently falling snow, readying itself to sink its venomous teeth into the prey's necks. Hello, Arctic! Coo! It's Arctic Summer World! I remember this. A Celtic warrior and a nameless swordsman have come out to greet you at the entrance to a magical park manifested at the end of the north. What awaits you at the place locked in an eternal summer? Love that. Alright. Baseball! Oh, she's cheering you on! Oh my goodness. It's adorable. Oh, I see that data lost. Okay. Oh, see here there is extra art down here.
Yep.
Okay. Oh yeah, I was looking at these. I mean, they give them a lot of facial expressions sometimes.
Tends to be the ones that have like a more active role in the story.
Yeah. Data lost. Oh, interesting with the hat.
And that would be the death of the human Musashi when she was human.
Oh, interesting. Love that. Oh yeah, they really went all out here.
Yeah, she is one of the major recurring characters of FGO.
Yeah. Aww. Okay, I've accidentally made my way into CE. Alright. Okay. Oh, that's nice. Oh, I know some of those people. That's Abby. And that's...
You know
every... Oh, I know who that is.
That's Scheherazade.
Yeah.
You know all the historical figures there. You
That's
don't know that
non-historical.
version, but it's non-historical.
Okay. See, this is the full version of that scene. Oh, look, she's eating fucking tempura. Alright. So yeah, there is a little bit more. Oh, fun backpacking with the sword. Reminds me a little bit of the Sasaki Kojiro one. Oh, very cute. And then the sample stuff. Okay. Oh, it matches with his. I was going to ask if it was meant to match together, but I bet it's for the same anniversary.
No. Wait, or the travel?
Yeah, this one.
Oh, if it's travel, then maybe.
Yeah, it is. Same as
maybe.
Sasaki. It even matches the background. I bet you... Hold on.
For third, that makes sense. That would be the same.
I know. I want to pull this up, and I want to compare them together. That's the travel outfit? Okay. When we get there. All right. Buddhism of emptiness. Oh, there's the statue and stuff. Namu Tenjin. Tenman Daijizai. Two opposites, two transcendental existences. A conclusion is sought at the end of inclusion. Divine the finite from an infinite set of possibilities. The limits constrict and a single conclusion is reached. The correct conclusion with no room for any other option. The celestial zero is the answer to my blade and heart. In emptiness lies virtue and no evil. Wisdom exists, principle exists, the way exists. The spirit is to be empty. What I master is not the technique of the blade. The path of the sword is the greater enlightenment, and it is my offering to this empty temple. This shit goes right over my head. I know it's meant to be like some philosophical offering, but my brain does not do philosophy very well. I'm just not the kind of person that can really settle down with it. Dango and udon. Two exquisite dumplings on a stick, and udon. While handmade chocolates are not her forte, this is what she came up with after thinking on what the recipient would like most. In her mind, the thing that makes her the happiest is sure to delight the recipient as well. Such a line of thinking indicates that she is still a novice when it comes to love. I don't know, I'd be pretty fucking happy with dango and udon for a return gift.
But I love me some good udon.
Alright, so, if you look at this, right? Look. They match!
Yes, they do.
They do. It's adorable. Okay. I'll close him now. Alright. Heroic Spirit Travel Journal. Yep. 3rd anniversary. Love it. Storms and Waves. Do I know?
You don't know the guy in the bottom right. I don't know about the top left.
With the X on his forehead and the bald
Oh, you
head?
don't know either of them.
Okay. Alright. A gust of fresh air blows across the summer ocean. Big waves, raging waves, no cause for concern, they won't stop her drive. Having the presence of mind to meld into nature is just further evidence of her mastery of the sword. CKT. Is this supposed to be her?
I think so.
Oh, okay. The colors of those condiments disturbs me. You might not be able to see it, but there's yellow, blue, red, and green.
What the fuck is the blue one?
I don't know, and it is
yellow
vibrant.
is mustard, red is ketchup, green is relish.
No. It's like the texture of ketchup, but green. I don't like that. Chaldea Kitchen Truck also goes by the name of Unlimited Burger Works. This time round, the truck heads out to fill hungry stomachs in New York. Enjoy a piping hot burger. She has a hot dog, though. It does say Unlimited Burger Works on their aprons.
I love it. I have never seen that one before. I love it.
All right. Tournament of the Seven Blade Master Heroic Spirits.
So this is directly, this is drawn by the artist of the manga and promotion for the manga.
That's really nice. The consciousness of Ritsuka, Chaldea's master, was suddenly taken to Japan's Edo period. In a Shimosa which experienced a different history, Ritsuka unites with the swordswoman they once met in their dream, Miyamoto Musashi. Together they battle the 7 sword masters who continuously repeat heinous massacres in duels to the death.
Yeah, this is my favorite chapter, so I'm excited for you guys to eventually see it.
Chaldea Park Caravan.
She's somewhere in that mess. I think, is that her right next to Mash's hip?
Where?
To the left of Mash's hip.
This?
Is that her? I can't tell.
It might be. I think it is. I think you're right. with the little Kath Palug cotton candy,
Yeah.
and Kath Palug with the churro.
You're just targeting this guy now, aren't you?
I genuinely do not look at Kath Palug and think foo for some reason. In my head, I don't think foo, I think Kath Palug.
Part of that's my fault because I introduced it to you as
Kath Palug. Yeah. Caldea Park, the dream space filled to the brim with a lot of attractions and events. This winter it has become a caravan and is coming to Fukuoka, Aichi, Ishikawa, and Osaka. Yeah. Okay. All right. Knowing the way broadly. Like the beginning of the year where everything starts afresh, I am here to greet and look upon you with eyes pure and bright. May the path you take also be as clear as the empty open sky we once looked upon together.
I do love that fate decided to take Miyamoto Musashi and just straight up continue on the sword hobo tradition.
Yeah. Okay. Looking towards tomorrow together. Is that Altera?
No, it's not a
No.
character you know yet.
Is this Wodaime?
That's Wodaime.
So maybe this is the servants drawn by the same artist?
Yeah, these are all servants that are involved in the Olympus chapter.
Oh, okay. The Olympus chapter then. I'm gonna not.
Yeah, we'll cover... I know what servant we'll cover this one with.
Okay. Heroic Spirit Travel Journal. Okay.
ひらめいた。今日中にうどん100杯目指しちゃおっか。
Hey, I have a great idea. Let's trading 100 bowls of udon in one day.
I'd say that we've done this with chicken nuggets.
But I would rather do it with udon.
I would too. I love udon.
Okay, so this is at Michi no Eki, Shodoshima Olive Park in Kagawa. Okay. Adorable. Alright. Okay, so this is one created for Fate Samurai Remnant.
I have that in my room.
Oh, yeah.
It's a poster behind me.
Okay. Fourth year of the Heian era Edo period. It has been several decades since the end of a turbulent, blood-soaked era. People were enjoying peace and tranquility, but a battle between 7 pairs of masters and servants is about to begin. As the waxing moon ritual unfolds in the shadows, Miyamoto Iori, a young man in Asakusa, finds himself caught in the violence of a Holy Grail war. Okay, Berserker! Bazaka! Baseball. I see she's got the tan mode. Interesting. Okay. Let's see what we got here. Okay. Okay. So we do have some extra stuff. Maybe. Yeah, okay. Saw that earlier. Oh, that's some nice art. Okay, into the sample images. All right, 3 craft essences. Not too many. Interesting. All right. Unforgettable summer. Ooh, look, a burger. There is pineapple on that burger. I take offense.
Actually, I've had pineapple on burger. It's pretty good.
Fucking hate pineapple.
It's because you hate pineapple in general.
Pineapple hurts me. Unforgettable summer, 2 heavens as one heart and mind. I may have wandered through numerous worlds, but nothing was more delightful than that summer. My journey may have met its end, but your travels are boundless. Swords clashed, there was a general hustle and bustle, dice were thrown, cards were played, roulette wheels spun. What an event. It was a whole new world for me, where we laughed together, we competed against each other, and we piled up numerous victories. The selfish me and the dreaded end both were like a pale mirage under the sunshine. It showed that an independent and displaced martial artist like myself can still dream like any other, and yet the burden these dreams put on is unnecessary for the path that I choose to take. Let's just say that this is a temporary caprice, and everything is bound to go back to normal. I shall keep these final moments concealed within my heart. The blue sky, the scorching winds, summer memories I spent with you as the flowering swords danced. Okay. Parfait Demon Sword Buster. Ooh. Yum. That looks fucking delicious. No pineapple to be seen. There's some chocolate in there, so it barely counts. At least that's her excuse. There are 2 spoons and 2 straws, so a couple can enjoy it together. The stick-shaped cookies that protrude from the chocolate parfait are supposed to represent Musashi's 5 blades. Dividing them up between 2 people will leave 1 left over, and it's up to the couple how that 1 cookie should be split and eaten. You really gambled on this one, Miyamoto Musashi. Oh, it's Pocky! It's different flavors of Pocky! I love it. All right. Oh, so both her versions got a...
She's holding Emiya's swords.
She is. Yeah. She really is. Okay. 7th anniversary. So this is... Oh. Can I click into that without...
Oh, I could say what that is.
What?
That's I wouldn't click into that because it's going to spoil some servants.
Okay.
That is the Lost Belt China.
Oh, okay.
So it's the idea was to draw her in the setting of China.
Okay. All right. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, so that's Musashi.
Yeah. I like it. Not my personal favorite, but I like it a lot. And I really like Dayu. She needs to be an FGO servant now. Fingers crossed. We want Dayu. Anyways, do you have a hint for our next servants? I mean, we're going to be visiting one of the great Chinese classics of literature.
Or we can just go watch some Dragon Ball.
I can make you read Dragon Ball for this.
No, you can't.
Damn. All right, well, we'll see you next time. Like, comment, subscribe.